Welcome back to Shift Mobility. Today is all about the great shift transformation beyond the buzz. Well, now we are going to switch gears and hear about the journey to zero emissions. More specifically, developing and researching solutions that will make an immediate impact toward net zero. We are going to now hear from Jens Müller-Belau about Shell's concepts for the future on the way to net zero. Jens?
Thank you very much for the quick introduction. I'm one of the managing directors for Shell in Germany, and I look after energy transition topics for our German-speaking region. So I'm very pleased to be with you today and tell you a little bit more about how we think about CO2 reduction for us, for our assets, but as well, most important, with our partners and customers. So when we start with the basic principle of us as a company, as Shell, having committed to help and do as much as we can to deliver the Paris Agreement, meaning keeping our net carbon footprint ambition, helping to be below the 2 degrees C, ideally 1.5 degrees C. And in association to that, we are really committed to become a net zero emissions company by 2050 or sooner. There are a couple of steps, as I said, which is our control, our assets, and on this slide here, on this picture, very important, it's the partnering, because we believe no company can do this alone. We believe that we will work with our partners, customers, and governments to move towards that ambitious goal. And I will talk you through with a little bit of focus on mobility options through what we have already in the market, as well as what we see a little bit more as an outlook coming in the next couple of years. So the key really for us is to work on the three principles, which is the first option always is to avoid emissions, avoid CO2, which not always is easy. It might take a few steps in between. And one of the steps in between is, for example, to change an energy carrier from A to B to produce, for example, power, but with that reducing the CO2 footprint of that power production. And as a last resort, we feel it is important to offer customers, as well as in our own remit, to compensate where needed as a consequence of today's situation of not potentially having a real alternative, which is reduction or avoidance. So over time, the journey is obviously driving us towards complete avoidance wherever possible. Let me start with our own assets and I'll give you a few examples out of the German market. And I start with where lots of things start for us, which is in the technology centers. In Germany, as Shell, we are very fortunate having a technology center, which is the global hub for mobility research for Shell, with a strong focus on the applications. And within those assets, we obviously take measures to reduce our own emissions, which starts with simple things like when we run our operations and we produce energy, to use that energy in other applications. So when we run engine tests, for example, to test latest, greatest CO2 reduced products, there's energy produced and we obviously want to use it. But as well, we purchase green power instead of standard power or grey power, as you know. So there are lots of individual bits and pieces that are adding up to driving an operational facility as the technology center to a lower CO2 footprint. Second example, and you heard from my colleague Jan Toschka this morning a lot about recharging, and him leading our retail business in Germany. Clearly, what I just said about the technology center is equally relevant for our retail operations, where purchasing green powers, or on these pictures, leveraging solar panels to produce green power locally. So all aspects to reduce the footprint of the operations in retail. And then the big challenge is really in an industrial area, and for those that operate large plants, whether chemical plants or steel plants or whatever, you will know that in those areas, investments into and more energy efficient and therefore CO2 reducing activities are standard already. And one of the examples here for the energy and chemical park in Rhineland, us building a new power plant, moving from heavy fuel oil to gas, therefore substantially reducing the CO2 footprint. With completion of the project, the CO2 reduction is in the area of about 170,000 kilogram tons of CO2. With that, I would like to show you a short video that will give you a broader perspective on how we intend to transform the energy and chemical park Rhineland towards a net zero emissions world.
Tackling climate change is one of the biggest problems our world is facing today. Shell is committed to contribute to such a net zero emissions world where society stops adding further greenhouse gases to what has been emitted already. That is why we have set ourselves a target to become a net zero emissions energy business, and we will do so in step with society and in line with the 1.5 degree scenario of the Paris Agreement. We work with customers and across sectors to accelerate the transition to net zero emissions. Collaboration is vital if we are to achieve these targets. No one player can do this alone. For our customers in transport and industry, low carbon or carbon-free products are critical to accomplish their own decarbonization targets. Shell Germany can help provide these products, be it hydrogen, power to liquids, bioproducts, or renewable power. Our strategy is to work with stakeholders across the whole value chain, such as in aviation, with aircraft manufacturers, airlines, governments, to boost together the demand for sustainable aviation fuels.
Now to chemicals and products. We are reshaping our chemicals and products businesses by bringing them even closer together. This better meets the needs of our business and our customers. It strengthens our ability to respond to future demand for low-carbon products, to grow our chemicals business, and crucially, to deepen our already successful integration with trading, delivering the most value from our manufacturing assets and products. So what does this look like? In addition to our dedicated chemicals facilities, we will have 6 energy and chemical parks. They will maximize the efficiency benefits of integrated fuels and chemicals production, and use repurposed assets to produce more low-carbon and synthetic fuels, in addition to high-value products, such as bitumen and lubricants. Changes to our product portfolio will help cut emissions generated by their use, while more renewable and recycled feedstocks will help lower the emissions generated in making them. Plans for our assets are underway. Here's Marco to tell us what it means at our Rhineland facility.
Thanks, Robin. Here at Rhineland, transforming our refining and chemicals complex means processing less crude oil and using more recycled and renewable feedstocks, such as waste oils and plastic waste. We will also be more focused on producing lower carbon products, such as bio-LNG, biofuels, including sustainable aviation fuel, and become the center of Shell's hydrogen production here in Germany. With our partners, we are building a PEM hydrogen electrolyzer, and by using renewable energy to power the process, it enables us to manufacture hydrogen with low carbon emissions. Rhineland and our 5 other energy and chemicals parks are strategically located, allowing us to deliver these lower carbon products to our customers efficiently and competitively.
We see ourselves as a partner to business, the political world and society. And this certainly in particular here in the Rhineland region. As one of the 6 global energy and chemical parks of the future, Rhineland will now become the heart of the new Shell. We now open its fence for investors and partners. We want to work with partners from services to energy integration to joint venture plans.
So I hope that gave you a little bit of an overview what agenda we have for our business transformation in Germany, which is very closely linked into the work that we do globally. So as I promised, let me provide a little bit of a deeper look into some of the activities that are ongoing, specifically with the focus on the mobility side. At the end, I will give a little bit more of a deep dive and some more context around hydrogen, which was featured in the video. Us just opening and starting up the run-up of the largest electrolysis unit in Europe, which is a 10 megawatt electrolyzer. But let me start with what we can do now and what actually today is a relevant contribution to reduce. So the second bucket of CO2 reduction priorities, which is the use of biofuels. A difficult topic potentially for the German market with some of the legacy. However, with the right bio feedstocks not competing with the food chain, there is a potential of substantial reduction for products that can be used in vehicles and trucks and applications today without any modification. One example, which we sell to primarily our B2B customers, is a product called R33, which was developed together with industry partners, reducing, compared to the standard fuel, the CO2 footprint by 20%. So today there are opportunities to leverage biofuels and make a substantial impact to CO2 in the transport sector. The second example, which I would like to highlight, is the bio-LNG strategy that we are executing for the German market. We have the ambition to have a network of LNG retail locations for heavy-duty trucks across the country, serving our customers in 2022-23 with bio-LNG, enabling a net zero operation of heavy-duty vehicles. We are currently working on the truck network, have opened more than 10 locations, and we are currently building a liquefaction plant in our energy and chemical park Rhineland to actually produce and liquefy biogas to bio-LNG, which is a substantial contribution in the heavy-duty sector as well. Even using natural gas-produced LNG today can have an impact of minus 20% of CO2 reduction for current operations. But as I said, our ambition is to serve our customers with a bio LNG, which would set those vehicles constantly fueled with that product to net zero. The next example, you who joined the conference earlier this morning, you have heard a lot about our electrification strategy from Jan Toschka, so I will not talk in lots of details about this element, just to possibly remind ourselves that ultimately our ambition is to serve the customer with the energy products they demand. So investing into multiple paths today to ensure that the customer has the product they need. In this case, not only at retail stations, but through our companies that serve charging on the road, our addition of the Shell family with Ubitricity, with very innovative solutions to charge vehicles, as well as charging at home through multiple product offers to, at the end of the day, enable a customer to re-energize the vehicle wherever they need it. Nevertheless, I talked earlier about the avoidance, the reduction, gave you, for example, but we as well have offers to our customers to compensate if they don't have a choice but to leverage this opportunity because they want to do something in terms of a global CO2 footprint reduction. The projects we use in our compensation strategy are of the highest quality, ensuring that there is a credible CO2 reduction, certified, externally certified, but we still believe we want to work on local projects, so we as well help local projects, in this case forestation in Schleswig-Holstein. So very clear that ultimately those investments do something good for the climate, but as I said, it's the third option. And how we apply that option to our own products, here an example where we offer CO2 neutral lubricants, where in the chain to produce that product, we use the compensation path to set those lubricants to a net zero product, which we feel as well is the right step in the direction of helping the planet and reducing the CO2 footprint for those lubricants. Let me move a little bit in details to our hydrogen strategy globally, but as well in Germany. And talking about hydrogen, you cannot start talking about it without talking about power. So for those that follow our company, we have over the last years invested substantially in the green power generation. So we have been successful in bidding for offshore wind farms. We are building wind farms around the world. In the moment, we are working on multiple gigawatt units to shift our portfolio to production units that produce energy which is zero CO2. So a very important element of transforming our company into a net zero emissions company over the next decades. The power business is expanding beyond generation. So we added to our company various companies in that segment. Just to name one here in Germany, Next Kraftwerke, a trading of green energy house, to as well connect across the entire value chain of power. As I said, I use that and just to illustrate, because ultimately hydrogen is stored electricity when we focus on green hydrogen, which primarily is what we intend and have from a long-term perspective in our strategic direction. So give me just a second, because the clicker lost the connection. So hydrogen, we do have a network of hydrogen refueling stations, which is being built and operated with the joint venture we are participating in, which is called H2 Mobility. We're close to 100 locations in Germany, and we believe that specifically for heavy-duty trucks, it is an energy carrier that we believe will have a very, very strong future. Hydrogen overall, not only in Germany but globally, is being developed rapidly. So the application for that green molecule is well beyond mobility, but it started here with the mobility space. We saw in the video a connect to the electrolyzer. Here you see a nice picture of that 10 megawatt electrolysis unit, which is in operations now, producing green hydrogen for the use in the refinery, but as well going forward, we intend to bring this to customers and into the market. I said earlier it's a 10 megawatt unit. It's the largest in Europe today, but we are working on the next larger sizes of electrolysis unit in the range of 100, 200 megawatt. And let me possibly use the next picture to illustrate a little bit clearer our intent for hydrogen, green hydrogen in Europe. Our intent is very much driven by an integrated and systemic approach, because we feel that you need to tackle not only the production, but as well the demand side, and to really have a more holistic approach, so that from an end-to-end perspective, hydrogen can be the energy carrier to really help the energy transition. Wherever possible, green electrons should be used. But to store the green electrons, hydrogen is the first chemical molecule, and maximizing that use in the next step is what we intend to do. So you see a few projects that are actively being pursued in our portfolio, starting at the top on retail stations, strong focus on the development of a heavy-duty truck network. Number 3 and 4 are production units. We talked about Refine 1, the picture. Refine 2 is the next larger unit we are planning. I will come back to the Hamburg example in the next slide, just to illustrate a little bit where we see the need today. But let me park that for a second. In the video, you saw we are highly interested in synthetic fuels, and we are looking into a unit as well in the Energy and Chemical Park Rhineland to produce synthetic aviation fuels, as we believe synthetic fuels for applications that really don't have real alternatives, as for example, aviation aircraft. We believe there is a need to decarbonize in that sector through some synthetic fuels, which could be power-based, but as well there is a biogenic feedstock pathway also, which would reduce the footprint of aviation. Then beyond that, and that's an important element, we can't stop with those projects on top, because we need to think much bigger to make hydrogen a relevant molecule really in the energy transition. Hence, we have projects underway to look at gigawatt scale of converting offshore wind into green hydrogen. The North H2 project is one project we are working on in the Netherlands. Aquaventus is a project in the German North Sea. So we believe you need a lot of those projects from a European perspective to maximize the opportunity that green electrons provide over the circle of a year. That is another element. I think the energy transition, looking at it through the country lens of Germany, is important, gets a lot of political support and will. However, overall, we need to look at CO2 across Europe. So that's what we intend to do in this example. But ultimately, CO2 is a global emission, and as a consequence of that, we need to work across countries, across continents, to really tackle and succeed meeting the ambition and the targets of the Paris Agreement. If I move to the next picture, as I said, on the Hamburg project, we are actively involved in a consortium together with partners to look into the production unit. Strong partnerships are essential for the energy transition, and why we like the project in Hamburg is driven by the fact that in Hamburg you do have on a relatively regional, relatively small footprint, a lot of application, a lot of customers, a lot of opportunities to advance in the hydrogen world, and more or less have a microcosmos of a hydrogen economy. The beauty of this example really is that there's a strong collaboration across a lot of partners to work on the different aspects that you see on this picture here. As we believe, if you get it right in that smaller scale, then the scaling up and the learning through that cross connection, through the sector coupling to maximize the use of the green electrons converted into hydrogen, potentially converted even in other molecules for some applications. You can really look at this through a very regional, very local lens. And the benefit of being in a harbor area, you have another application that is considered to be difficult to decarbonize, which is the shipping. But as well, you do have local transport. You do have industry from steel to refining, chemical. So a great opportunity to really pull this all together through a very strong partnership approach. Sorry, I think this clicker lost the connection, so reconnecting. All right, so would like to as well open the space a little bit. On the previous picture, you've seen that terminaling of hydrogen. So from a Shell perspective, we believe hydrogen has the potential to become a global tradable product. And the picture you see here is the first ship actually that has been built in partnership with 2 other companies to transport liquid hydrogen. So there is an element around expectations for the energy transition and individual products and projects. They are on different time scales. So the picture is to illustrate it's the first and only ship that does exist today that actually will transport liquid hydrogen. It's a project that is connecting production in Australia with applications in Japan, which is evolving. But the point is, and it closes a little bit the loop to one of the first pictures I showed, which was the technology center. So on lots of technologies for the energy transitions do exist. Some of them need to scale up. Some of them might not be able to scale up. So in the moment, from a Shell perspective, we don't leave any stone unturned to exploit technical opportunities and move them into scale as fast as possible or sensible. So from a hydrogen perspective, a great example how this is evolving. So I would like to really re-emphasize a couple of points I made and hopefully got across. Energy transition is possibly one of the biggest challenges we face as a society. Definitely as a company, it is a challenge that we actually are motivated by. We're very motivated by developing technologies, offering our customers solutions to help reducing their carbon footprints through products or services we can provide without underestimating our own challenges with assets, without underestimating our transformation requiring us to shift our portfolio dramatically. But this is only doable and only feasible when we collectively collaborate. So we have very strong partnerships, as I highlighted, across multiple, not only projects, but as well broader partnerships. We also need the support of governments, working with governments to really look for good solutions to transform energy systems in country. Ultimately, it is not on paper. It looks easy, but in reality, it's more than a marathon, as the energy system overall is very, very large, and our appetite for energy as human beings is pretty substantial. So, and converting that into a world of net zero requires all our efforts, and it's not an either or, it's an and that we have to focus on. So we can't exclude a solution which really has a contribution to the CO2 footprint, or to reduce that CO2 footprint. We really have to work together. And if I possibly have one plea is really, let's make sure that we have an open and honest dialogue about what is feasible today. Let's maximize those opportunities and not wait for the perfect solution, which might come decades down the line. So in terms of avoiding, should always be the focus. Let's, where we can replace and avoid CO2 reduction, let's go for it. We have opportunities to reduce, and we need to wait for the complete avoidance. Let's maximize that opportunity now also. And then, as I said, if there are elements to compensate, and even through the German lens, there are numbers, what level of CO2 might be left through agriculture, also through other processes where complete avoidance is not possible. We still need options to store or to utilize CO2 in a different way then. And one of the opportunities is the compensation now, and moving it to the left of the slide I showed earlier. So I can tell you that the Shell's road into the future is possibly not as straightforward as the picture is illustrating. However, we do have a very clear commitment to become a net zero emissions company. It's very, very clearly articulated, and we see quite a few opportunities already today. But more importantly, our portfolio of options that we have available is growing, and we look forward to really work with industry and governments to jointly succeed in the energy transition. And with that, I would like to close the presentation. I hope I was able to convey a few ideas. I hope it sparked a few thoughts, and I'm looking forward to getting through the system some feedback on how you felt our journey is connecting with your own efforts to reduce carbon, CO2 going forward. Thank you very much.
Jens Müller-Belau from Shell, I thank you very much for your presentation.